Hello and welcome to a new series, Battlefield Classified. Now in this series I am planning to work in collaboration with a YouTuber who I know very well, goes by the name SurrealNo. You'll find his channel on screen now. We are going to have a chat about some different things that we expect to see in the new Battlefield, and not only that, we're going to look in depth at some more talking points, maybe looking at the game modes, different vehicles, ranks, gadgets, attachments, the UI, battle log, all sorts of different stuff. But it's going to be very interesting, very informative, and it's going to form the basis of some sort of discussion that can continue down in the chat, in Reddit, wherever this video ends up, and then we can kind of talk all the way up to the first legitimate leak that comes out for the new Battlefield game, and we can get talking as much as possible. Make sure you go over to SurrealNo's channel straight away and either subscribe to him or at least check out his stuff, because he's going to be hosting the next video. It is going to be on his channel alone, and that's what we're going to do every week, have an episode on each channel. So it's definitely worth checking out his channel as soon as you can and clicking that subscribe button so you don't miss the next video. So without further ado, let's get into the actual episode. Starting off, I'd like to talk about the first leak that really caught my attention recently, and that's the Battlefield 5 Eastern Front approach. You can take it from two standpoints as an actual leak itself, so whether they're looking into the future, which I think that's where the leak is going to be, focusing on, or whether you're looking at the historic Eastern Front, obviously with the World War and that war on two fronts. But I believe this one's referring to the future and will be a continuation from the US versus Russia and China setup that is on Battlefield 4 currently. This big leak, and I put that in massive inverted commas, revolves around that Eastern Front approach, continuing the war between Russia and the additional Asian forces and the US. My understanding is that this leak places World War III slightly into the future, but keeps the Battlefield 4 style in terms of vehicles and infantry balance, and I would assume the game modes are going to be very similar in terms of Conquest and Rush. As for this leak's legitimacy, I'm not really too certain on it myself. I think it's just been something that's been made up overnight to try and gain a bit of publicity. The second leak or possibility that I'd like to talk about revolves around a World War II game. Why it wouldn't be such a bad idea to bring out a World War II game right now. Personally, I haven't played a World War II game since Call of Duty World at War. I think that was about 2009, I think, 2008, 2009.
Like back when Call of Duty actually still had something to say.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Battlefield, or DICE at least, moving towards a World War II setting would make a lot more sense. We've seen Call of Duty move away from that setting and then into the future, so why not go back to that period in time and have a look at building the game there. The other games at the minute, I've had a quick look at the other ones that are focusing on World War II and people still playing them. We've got Red Orchestra, a couple of the older Battlefields, Heroes and Generals, and then Battalion 1944 that, with its Kickstarter and the AAA developers that are behind it, obviously not the studio, but we've got previous AAA studio developers backing it. I think that's going to be a really successful game coming out, I think, May 2017. So with Battlefield 5 coming out before that, I wouldn't be surprised to see a World War II game come out and maybe sort of steal some of the thunder from Battalion 1944, because it is gaining a lot of steam.
I'm telling you, I haven't really researched Battalion yet, but I will.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking at getting into it at some point, I think. But
depends, I mean, if Battlefield is successful, I don't know, like a game, a AAA game, if it's successful, that can take a lot of another game's player base, like if it releases in October or November and it keeps making people want to come back, that'll definitely impact Battalion.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I can't imagine they're going to be too happy if Battlefield's released and is super successful. Yeah. But yeah, I'd embrace a World War II game, I think. Admittedly, it would be a different approach to Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3.
I'd go even further than that. I'd go even further and say, like I said, I wanted to talk about part of their business strategies, and one of the key strategies that they focus on relates to innovation. Like, even if they get something right to the point that it cannot or should not be improved, they still try to improve it for some reason or change it, and usually end up breaking specific features, or the game itself sometimes. We've seen crashes because of this. We've seen features that were loved by the community go up in smoke I mean,
Yeah, definitely.
the point I'm making is that they always try to do something new or differently, which isn't necessarily a bad thing in itself, but this is where we see a first trend, you know. They always try to come up with something new or something original, something authentic. That's the trend, you know. And if you look at all of the Battlefield games, which are relevant, of course, if you look at Battlefield 1942, it was World War II themed. It was basically the competitor to Call of Duty at that time. Then we had Vietnam, of course, with the Vietnam War. Then we had BF2, which was kind of a modern day global conflict where the US, China, Russia, EU and MEC, which was something original, was like a Middle Eastern coalition, you know, so you had that. So it was kind of a World War III type of game. Then you had 2142, you know, it's future setting and all that. And after that, like for I don't even know how many years we've had. I think Bad Company 2 was released in 2009. I think so. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but it's about then.
But yeah, anyway, since 2009 up until this year, we've only had modern day global conflict set into the near future with a bit of prototypes and shit like that, you know, like mortars or UCAVs, or that's not really used by the military, you know, or the XM25, that's a prototype, that's not actively used. Even active protection for the tanks is not actively used. Those are still in the works, still being developed, still evolving, you know?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I'd like to give a bit of insight as far as the marketplace is concerned. And if you look at the marketplace right now, the market is like oversaturated with modern day shooters or games set in the future or near future. Or we have BF3 and BF4, which still haven't died, but we'll most likely see like a huge decrease when BF5 comes out. That's natural. We saw a decrease in BF4 when BFH came out, right?
Yeah.
That's only natural.
Yeah.
BFH I don't even recognize as being a part of the Battlefield franchise. I was extremely disappointed by that.
Yeah, same.
Arma 3, we have Arma 3, we have CS, Call of Duty, Insurgency, a lot of games set in the present or near future. That's why I'm saying there is nothing set in World War One. You know, keep in mind, we already had World War Two with Battlefield 1942 and Call of Duty, and now we have in World War One we have Verdun. It has been critically acclaimed and basically showed there is a market for this sort of shooter.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
But it doesn't do the combined vehicle infantry combat that Battlefield does. You know, that's the point. It's just infantry, and if DICE can pull off this, you know, that's why I'm gonna go for that for the very first leak that I ever heard, and you'll see why I'm making this point. Why it, in all likelihood, will be a World War One game. There was a leak by a German game retailer called World of Games, which had in its description of BF5 on their site as being, and I quote, a multiplayer tactical shooter set in World War One. I don't know who noticed it at the first, but sadly once something is on the internet, it stays on the internet whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So I can only assume they were directly contacted shortly after it was found out and took down the description. Whether it's innocent or deliberately done, I don't know, to test the waters, you know? We've seen these leaks in quotes, I'm making rabbit ears. We've seen these leaks in the past, and you know...
Well, it's simple marketing in a way, isn't it? You get your game out there, and if, you know, get people talking about your brand.
It's basically hype creation, and you don't have to pay anything. Anyway, whether it's innocent or deliberately done to test the waters, I don't know. Now, whether it's true or not, why even have a debate? We'll see at EA Play in June, won't we?
Yeah.
But it fits perfectly with the idea that EA or DICE are doing a complete 180 in my opinion, and making a game set in World War One. Plus, if they do this before, think about this, if they do this before Call of Duty can get back to its grassroots, then they achieve what they've always wanted and will beat out the competition. If they do it before Call of Duty does World War One or World War Two game, it's done. Call of Duty is out of the picture. I mean, what they're doing is resetting time. Call of Duty had the advantage back when, like in 1942, when you had Call of Duty versus 1942, it had an advantage.
Yeah.
It was the first one, blah blah blah. It had an advantage. Battlefield had the advantage of being infantry combined with vehicles. That was its main selling point,
Yeah. Well, you had three main ones. I remember when I was, when I first had my PC back when I was a kid, you had your Call of Duty, Battlefield, and Brothers in Arms. Brothers in Arms has gone, obviously, whenever that went. But the other two have kind of gone off in their two separate directions. Obviously, Call of Duty being...
mutated.
Yeah. Call of Duty being massively successful and building on its previous game, almost just reskinning it and chucking it back out for people to buy. But there's going to be a point where they have to change focus and go somewhere else with it.
Exactly. And if DICE does this before they do, they're screwed. And I'm already seeing this happen.
I think it would be awesome as well to go, obviously as a community, go back and almost, as you say, start again. Back in World War One, which is about as far back as you'd like to go with anything. And by the time you get to modern day combat, you'd have hoped, probably talking 5 or 6 years at least, you'd have hoped that the kind of geopolitical mess that's going on at the minute will have shifted focus slightly, giving a bit more chance, because it's no surprise Call of Duty's gone to the future and avoided itself with all of this, and
of course
Battlefield's stuck with, I mean, no one really cares whether you're the US or the Chinese or the Russian factions. It's just a name for something. Most people don't read too much into that.
They don't have a vested interest in anything, so basically who cares? It's the future. I mean, it's not like it's gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
One last point I'm trying to make, and it's kind of similar to what you're saying. If you look at all the wars in history, but keep in mind what I've said until now, with the innovation, all the Battlefield titles, what they're doing with trying to compete against Call of Duty, keep in mind all of that leak, which was the first leak, it was the very first leak. So keep in mind all of that, and this is one final point I'm trying to make. Like, if you look at all the wars in history, nobody gives a fuck about World War One. As far as controversy is concerned, nobody cares. While all the others are surrounded by a lot of controversy. Pearl Harbor, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Vietnam, all of them are surrounded. The Gulf, huge controversy there, even in the 90s and now. So, in this day and age, they kind of have to be politically correct and tiptoe through the tulips as to not get a lot of bad press. There is no risk if they do a World War One game. Nobody has a vested interest in that. Nobody cares what happened like almost 100 years ago. Nobody cares. If they do that, I'm betting almost nobody will criticize them for the setting or the plot. And if you think about it, it's basically a clean slate and an excuse for them to start everything over again with World War II, Vietnam, the Gulf, present day, as well as one-upping the competition, all in one stroke. So my bet is World War One.
Yeah, and I'd probably agree with you on that until it comes out and is probably some futuristic hover tank.
Please
bullshit.
no. Please no. God,
Makes us all
no.
reinstall Battlefield 4. So that wraps it up for this episode. I really hope you did enjoy it. We covered quite a lot of stuff, I think, today, and more importantly, I think we opened a couple of people's minds to what you could actually expect in the new Battlefield and what our thoughts on the game itself are. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next episode.